My name is Terry Huxtable, and together with my wife, we are members of the family branch in Western Australia. In 2026, there are two important and significant anniversaries to celebrate within our Schoenstatt family. 100 years since the founding of the Schoenstatt Sisters of Mary, and 75 years since the first Schoenstatt sisters came to Australia. As we prepare to celebrate these two milestones, it is good to look back at the sisters' history, to revisit some of the events that happened, as well as to examine why they happened. By looking back, we can also see God's guiding hand gently directing their steps. Today, I'll present an introduction and brief outline of the history of the Schoenstatt Sisters of Mary in Australia. There are many stories within the Australian history of the sisters which could be told of individuals and personal journeys, but here I would like to provide a basic framework into and onto which we can build a more complete picture over the next 12 months. Our story begins towards the end of 1900 in Rome. Bishop William Kelly from Geraldton in Western Australia, while visiting Rome, was informed that the French Trappist monks who had been working in his diocese at the Beagle Bay and Broome missions were leaving. An approach was made to the Palatines to supply missionaries to take over the mission at Beagle Bay. On the 11th of March 1901, 4 Palatines arrived at Beagle Bay in the far north of WA, some 2,500 kilometres from Perth. In a 1991 October conference talk titled Schoenstatt in Australia, Father John Evans said, "The mission was placed under the care of the Limburg province. Through this act, divine providence had prepared the way for Schoenstatt in Australia. If the English or Italian province had been given care of the mission, then Schoenstatt would not have had the instruments to introduce Schoenstatt to Australia." The community at Beagle Bay grew, and in the 1920s the Palatines purchased a farm at Tarden, some 2,000 kilometres to the south, about 500 kilometres northeast of Perth. Meanwhile, back in Germany, on October the 1st, 1926, the community which became the Schoenstatt Sisters of Mary was founded. At Tarden, a primary school with boarding facilities was opened in 1948 to cater for the local Aboriginal community. The care of the children at school and in the girls' dormitory was first entrusted to the Presentation Sisters, then in 1949 to the Dominican Sisters. When they informed the Palatines of their intention to leave at the end of 1950, a request was made directly to Father Kentenich to send Schoenstatt sisters to take over the school and the girls' dormitory. Father Kentenich saw in this the guidance of divine providence and an open door. In his broad vision, the whole world is our field. When presenting the mission cross to the first pioneer sisters, Father Kentenich said, "Receive this external sign as a constant and effective reminder of your God-given mission to conquer the world for the Father in and with the Mother of God, in the shadow of the cross and in and with Christ." They made their way to Genoa and there boarded the Serenia and, after 4 weeks at sea, on April 6, 1951, the first 4 sisters disembarked at Fremantle in Western Australia. These first pilgrims were Sister Aegidius, Sister Anita, Sister Bonitas and Sister Magdalene. They left Germany in late winter and arrived in Tarden in early autumn. Average temperature in Germany, -1 to 25. In Tarden, 7 to 37. So the four sisters started out with much dedication and courage. They confronted difficulties and hardships required to establish themselves in another country. Isolation, primitive setup, the unknown mentality of the Aborigines, as well as their own difficulties with the English language. They realised, however, that their missionary work in Tarden was only a stepping stone to reaching the overall population of Australia. In May 1952, Sister Bonitas took seriously ill and was called home to her eternal reward on the 31st of August. She offered her life for Schoenstatt in Australia. Early in 1953, another four sisters arrived in Australia and first went to Tarden. In July, again at the invitation of the Palatines, four sisters travelled to the new mission at Wandering, south of Perth. Sister Eloise, Sister Anne, Sister Hadmaris and Sister Matrudis. The Schoenstatt sisters' time at the Wandering mission lasted from July 1953 to May 1975. In 1956, 5 more sisters arrived in Australia. There were 2 more additions in 1957 and again 2 more in 1960. In 1956, when the Palatines were entrusted with a new parish at Riverton, a Perth suburb, and asked the sisters to establish and build up a Catholic school, it was as though a new era had begun. Sister Magdalene was chosen to lead this task as the school principal. Also in 1956, an invitation was received from the Palatine rector in Melbourne to visit the Schoenstatt family, which had started under Palatine guidance, at their Kew property. Sister Eloise and Sister Aegidius travelled to Melbourne. Following their visit, it was decided not to settle in Melbourne, but to look for other ways to continue their Australian mission. In 1957, Sister Anita and Sister Mariwada left WA for Sydney to live in Vaucluse, while one sister undertook the task of providing ongoing care for their host, Mrs. O'Neill, who was in poor health. The other engaged in further studies and self-improvement. The sisters took it in turns, each one doing 1 year of studies and the second year caring for Mrs. O'Neill, or vice versa. Then, in 1960, the sisters were forced through sickness and lack of resources to withdraw from the Tarden mission. They purchased a place of their own in Ashfield, a suburb of Sydney, as the new centre of the community. This continued being a city centre until it was sold to the Wesley Mission in 1980. Then, in 1962, a young woman from Perth accepted her calling and entered the sisters' community. Sister Helen became the first Australian Schoenstatt sister. This was the new growth that the community had been praying for. Since Sister Helen entered, Sister Elizabeth, Sister Mary Louise, Sister Rebecca, Sister Julie, Sister Rita, and very recently Sister Olivia have increased the Australian representation among the sisters. 4 more sisters arrived from overseas in 1964, and this time they brought the altar for the future shrine as part of their luggage. 1966 was a momentous year, with firstly the blessing of House Schoenstatt at Riverton. This facility, which provided living, dining and meeting rooms, cemented the Schoenstatt sisters' presence in Australia. And secondly, there was an invitation from Father Archbold, recently appointed as parish priest at Mount Druitt in Western Sydney, for the sisters to begin working to help build up the new Mount Druitt parish. This meant a welcome move into pastoral care within the Australian Church. Divine Providence was seen to be at work again, and the sisters continued living in the parish until 1985. Following further new arrivals, the sisters' community in Australia grew and was granted province status in 1967. The search for a suitable site for a shrine was started, and in 1967 land was purchased at Mulgoa and named Mount Schoenstatt. The turning of the soil to mark the start of the building process took place in September, and the following May, in 1968, Cardinal Gilroy officially blessed and opened the Mulgoa Shrine. In the 1970s, under the sisters' guidance, the Schoenstatt movement experienced continuous growth with the building of a training centre, Joseph Kentenick House, next to the shrine. Sister Georgina began an outreach work to Toowoomba in Queensland in 1979, and this outreach continued until 1993, Sister Renee being the last sister to work there. By 1987, the community had built up to the extent that 2 sisters were sent to start work in Cebu in the Philippines. Sister Myrna, together with Sister Juliana, a Filipina from the United States province, were the first missionaries. Sister Mary Agnes followed in 1989. There are now a shrine and a thriving Schoenstatt community there in Cebu. Again, in 1987, land was purchased at Armidale in WA as the future site for a pilgrim centre and shrine. At the beginning of 1991, the recently completed Emily House was opened as a kindergarten at the Armidale site. During that year, a new house for the sisters and a shrine were completed, leading in November to the official opening and blessing of the Armidale Shrine by Archbishop Hickey. During the 90s, the sisters withdrew from classroom teaching at Riverton and, towards the end of the decade, stepped away from running the kindergarten as well. These steps led to the sale of Schoenstatt House in Riverton in 2002, with the sisters now living at the larger properties at Armidale and Mulgoa. The sister story from 2000 is one we all share, one we are living now. At both Mulgoa and Armidale, the sisters continue to provide sacramental preparation courses, one-day and weekend retreats, a welcoming presence at our shrine for any travellers or pilgrims, as well as instruction and sharing on Father Kentenick and Schoenstatt spirituality during conferences and meetings, always with the aim of leading us closer to our Blessed Mother and, ultimately, to our Father in heaven. There is also a guiding hand assisting the Schoenstatt movement live and grow in Australia, including regular visits to Melbourne to assist and guide the Victorian movement work. There is no doubt that many events and dates which I have not mentioned are of significant importance in the sisters' history in Australia. However, I've tried to present some framework onto which these other stories can be attached. We need to continue to document the early history as well as our current history in order to inform future generations of Australian Schoenstatters of the struggles, sacrifices, hardships, as well as the joys and blessings which have led us all to striving to conquer Australia for our Blessed Mother. As Edith Stokes said at our national conference in September 2025, these are the foundations we, the Schoenstatt movement, build on, and we acknowledge the courage, loyalty and faithfulness of the founding sisters, for their missionary zeal and the deep awareness that they were instruments in the hands of the Blessed Mother. Sister Inez has often said, Opera Dei ex nihilo, the works of God come about from nothing. From the small beginnings at Tarden in Outback WA, the Schoenstatt Sisters of Mary have accomplished so much in Australia. As I stated at the beginning of this talk, this is just part of a framework of the history of the Schoenstatt Sisters in Australia. I have omitted names, events, activities and dates. Our task now is to complete that skeleton and flesh out the whole body. Some of this work has been done by others, and I have included some references below. There are no doubt other presentations of the history of the sisters hidden within Schoenstatt records. During this coming year, these should be rediscovered, collated, perhaps represented, and published for future generations. Thank you. We now have some questions for you. In this Jubilee year, where we are encouraged to be pilgrims of hope, share your thoughts on the example given by those original pilgrims coming to Australia. What is it that we can learn from these first sisters? Number 2, there are references to and signs of divine providence within the Australian history of the Schoenstatt Sisters of Mary. Where can you see divine providence in your life's journey? Have you ever had to abandon yourself, as our first sisters did, and place yourself completely in God's hands? And 3, over the next 12 months, how can we make a conscious effort to discover the hidden stories behind the journeys of each of our sisters and help document Schoenstatt's history in Australia?